Hi, this is Sandra from Source Outreach Ministries. Welcome today to our next study. The next book in the Bible today is the book of Ruth. This is a really nice story about friendship, love, giving to others. It's really good. I really enjoyed it. Okay, let's move on. Okay, what the book of Ruth teaches us about God's Hest love. And I learned this myself today. So I hope it will be something you didn't know about and you will be encouraged to do this. Okay, it says, when we think about love, we often think about romantic love between a man and a woman. However, the story of Ruth and Naomi highlights the love, faithfulness, and commitment between the daughter-in-law and her mother-in-law. The book of Ruth takes place during the period of the Judges, a time of sin, turmoil, and hardship for Israel. While we often think of the book as a romance between Ruth and Boaz, the story really focuses on Ruth and Naomi. After settling in Moab with her husband and sons, Naomi loses everything and is left with her daughter-in-law, Ruth. We learned a lot about God's hest toward his people through Ruth and Naomi, and Boaz, who demonstrated incredible faithfulness to God and each other in a time of unfaithfulness and sin in Israel's history. All right. What is hest? I don't know. I hope I'm saying it right. Hest is an interesting word. It does not easily translate into English and is often rendered in different ways in various English translations. For example, the English Standard Version often translated as favor or steadfast, love. On the other hand, the King James Version may translate it as mercy or kindness. When we think of God's hest, the first word that may come to mind is love. However, hest is actually a little more specific than the English word love. It can be translated as kindness, loyalty, and goodness. One key thing you should know about hest is that it is much more than a feeling. It carries the idea of a commitment and sometimes speaks of the undeserved mercy or grace one receives from another. Okay. All right. Now here's an example. It says in Genesis 39:21, God shows hest to Joseph and allows the prison guard to act kindly towards him. Remember, he got put in prison, and the guard liked him. So that's kindness. That's hest. That's beyond love. It's special. Okay. And First Chronicles 16:34, David praises God for his hest. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. This is David. He loved God so much. So he had the ability of having a hest love like God. All right. As you can see, God shows hest to individuals. Individuals show hest towards each other. And God shows hest toward entire groups of people. And that's the Israelites, the Jews. He loved them unconditionally forever. Right? All right. What was it like for widows and orphans living in Israel? Okay. So Ruth and Naomi, earlier I mentioned that Naomi lost everything after moving to Moab with her husband and two sons. They all passed away and she became a widow. Naomi had two daughter-in-laws and both were left widows as well. Wow. After deciding to return to Bethlehem, Naomi urged her daughters-in-laws to return to their home. She knew they would be better off if they did. One daughter-in-law returned home, but Ruth decided to stay. The two women were incredibly vulnerable as they were both widows living in Israel during the tumultuous period of the Judges, as we just did last week. All right. Naomi and Ruth, it says, I want to make it clear that there was nothing in it for Ruth. In fact, she was walking into a life of potential hardship. There was a famine in Bethlehem, Judah. She was a widow, and she was a foreigner. Not to mention, she was from Moab, and the Israelites and the Moabites didn't get along very well. So she's really walking into some situation. And then it says, so what made Ruth decide to stay with Naomi? The hest. She was committed to her mother-in-law and had no intention of leaving her behind. Isn't that amazing? She was sacrificing everything for Naomi to stay with her. And later in the book, Naomi also shows Hest to Ruth by essentially putting her in the path of her relative Boaz. As a young widow, Ruth had more of an opportunity to be remarried and have children than Naomi did. Naomi knew that a marriage to Boaz would help Ruth financially and help her have the children she desired. This is in Ruth 3, 1 through 5. See this? Back from one individual to another. Wow. Then we have Boaz and Ruth. After leaving Moab, Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem right in time for the barley harvest. Ruth ended up cleaning in Boaz's field. So she was working. This widow woman was working. Now, according to the law of Leviticus, landowners were required to leave enough grain for those who were less fortunate. See, they were also required to do something in Leviticus, okay? Boaz actually went above and beyond this. He was a really good person and instructed his servants to leave extra wheat in the field just so that Ruth could have an abundance of grain. If that's not Hest, I don't know what is, okay? Why did Boaz show such kindness to Ruth? Because of her kindness to her mother-in-law, Naomi. See, when you give, you receive, and sometimes it's way more than what you put out, what you gave, right? But we have to really think about not being so selfish. All right, then we have Boaz marries Ruth. So Boaz not only married Ruth, he also acted as her kinsman or redeemer and redeemed the inheritance that she would have lost. See, we just see this back and forth, such giving. As a result, Ruth and Naomi had greater financial stability and the potential for an heir to continue the legacy of their family. At the end of the story, Ruth gives birth to a son named Obed. Although Obed was Ruth's son, they exclaimed that the son was born to Naomi. Wow. This is significant because an heir provided a lot of protection and security for the women. Okay. So this is such a giving story of Ruth. And then it says a few key points from the book of Ruth. God provides to those with nothing. God cares for the broken and hurting. God uses ordinary people as a conduit of his blessing. And God is faithful to do what he says he will do. Right. And then here, now what? In the book of Ruth, we see God's faithfulness most clearly through individuals, kindness towards each other, as I mentioned in the beginning. We often think of love as a romantic connection between two people. However, love is action-based. We are called to love others even when we don't even feel like it, and there's nothing in it for us. Consider showing kindness to somebody today. You never know how much they might need it. And you never know how your kindness can help fulfill God's plan for their life, as you'll see in a minute. Let's be like Ruth, more concerned with how we can support our loved ones than we are about receiving from them. Finally, may our love be more than just words. May it be visible in our actions too. And this is God and Israel and eventually the whole world. Let's look at the last few verses of chapter 4. Now, these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Abinadab. Abinadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. So this is a genealogy. And this all took place because of Ruth and Naomi in this story. This continued this legacy of genealogy, all right? Through two struggling widows, one who was a Gentile and came from a nation Israel despised, God paved the way for Israel to receive a king after his own heart. Obed was an ancestor of King David. But beyond this, Obed and David were both ancestors of Jesus Christ, our Messiah and Savior. Can you see this? You just don't know what you can do to cause history to become really, really good. And in this case, Jesus came out of all of this. This is so amazing, right? All right. So I just thank you so much for listening to this lesson today. And from what you've learned today, can you have a Hess love like God? Can you be kinder? Can you do things without wanting anything back, even when it hurts? Okay. So I would just ask today that you get your life in order, give your life to Jesus, and don't be destroyed for lack of knowledge. The Bible is your guide during these times on earth. And if you choose not to do these, there is death and destruction for you if you stay in the world with the enemy. Satan comes only to this earth to steal, kill, and destroy you. So may you make the right decision. It is in your hands. God bless, and we'll be back next week with a new lesson. Thank you for watching.